We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the CashFlowPro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of CashFlowPro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I'm here today with Sterling White of Sonder Investment Group. Sterling, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. Could always use improvement, of course. And luckily, we were able to get through that intro because we had a little bit of technical difficulties at first, but we're good.
It's always dealing with technology is always fun when it works, and when it doesn't work, it can make you want to pick your $3,000 MacBook Pro up and throw it across the room. And I have at least two of those fits a week.
into a batch of pillows, of course, or feathers, so it doesn't break.
That's right. Something that we don't want to have to replace it and use investor money to rebuy all of our computer products that we have. So awesome, man. So tell us a little bit about yourself and Sonder Investment Group, and then of course I know there's an array of topics you want to jump into, and I'm going to kind of let you pick that. But tell us a little bit about who Sterling is and what you got going on.
Yeah, so appreciate the opportunity on being on here, and I am still to this day, Casey, figuring out who Sterling White is. So on this ever-ending journey with that, but is born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana. Now I'm actually out here in Houston, Texas, where they say everything's bigger, and grew up in the not so good parts of the city of Indianapolis, and single mother, fraternal twin brother, and just every other day, you never knew if you were going to make it to the next day. And at 5 years old, almost lost my life to a stray bullet. And just sitting at the kitchen table, eating ramen noodles, and then go upstairs with my brother, and the bullet comes right through the back patio where we were sitting. And that was just another day in living in the hood. And fast forward, got into real estate. This was 19 years old. So this is about 2009, where things just were not so good in the industry as a construction laborer. Then I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which many are familiar with that book.
Sterling, nobody ever mentions that book on this show. You're the first.
Not at all. So I read that book and ended up quickly realizing that rich and wealthy people did not get that way by being laborers. They were actually investors. And then I ended up getting my very first single family house once I made that transition with no money out of pocket. I actually had no credit, actually had negative funds in my bank account when I first started. Bought 150 single families and then transitioned to multifamily in 2017 and got up to about 500 units. So that's about 31 years compressed in about 1.5, 2 minutes, you would say, Casey?
That's right. And you know, one thing that jumps right out with your story is, of course, like you said, you called it just another day in the hood. And I oftentimes, of course, I don't really relate all that well. I mean, as a middle-aged white male who basically, my parents weren't wealthy growing up. My parents weren't poor growing up. There was one portion of my life where we lived in a little area that wasn't all that wonderful, but I certainly didn't experience things like what you're talking about. And I think the majority of people don't. And it's very interesting to me how you kind of have made your own opportunities and how you have you just like you woke up one day and you were like, you know, to hell with this. I'm gonna, obviously the rich dad, poor dad part of it, but what types of things, this is kind of a general consensus, I thought, what kind of things do you think those of us and you now could do or should do to reach out to young kids who may not have the best of living conditions, to help them say, hey guys, you don't have to follow me. You don't have to follow Sterling, but hey, if you get up, show some fortitude, show some reserve, show that you want to do something. I mean, I just feel like that's a lot of people feel like they get trapped in those situations.
Yeah, I would say, Casey, is just being in that environment, you are trapped in how that system is set up, but don't want to go down the rabbit hole when it comes to that. But luckily, I mean, my twin brother took the common path that many people do take and is facing hard time, unfortunately, due to the decisions that he ended up making. But I ended up just, I don't know if it was the universe, some higher being, or what it was exactly that and this was actually one key moment that happened, was the people that you surround yourself with. Mother moved us out from the inner city to more of the suburbs, so a completely different setting. We were still in lower income housing and affordable, but it was just a completely different friends group. However,
Yeah.
my brother went back to that environment that we grew up in and those same friends, and then that was the path that he ended up taking. So one of the things that I would say is I've had multiple pivotal moments in life, but what happens is, and this is a question I have for you, Casey, is that I actually listened. I believe everyone, and I could be wrong with this, has those moments in life, and it's either you are fearful and you take a step back, or you embrace it and you end up taking a step forward. So that's
Well,
what happened for me.
do you think that the fact that, just for instance, your brother, because you see that a lot, and I hate to have a whole episode on capital raising and real estate that centers around the economic struggles of some of the inner city kind of things that we both know exist. But I really want to go in a little bit on this and say, do you think your brother, like, say, or people like your brother, go back to that because either A, they feel like they have control in that area, or B, it's tough to imagine somebody feels comfortable in something like that, but there has to be something that's drawing them back that says, hey, is it easy? Is it the, and maybe your brother sold drugs. I don't know, but I'm just saying, I know a lot of people
Yeah.
go back because they find that's the way they can make money. That's the way they can earn a living, is to operate a corner or whatever you will.
Yeah. So I
Again, I
know
don't mean to
there's,
just throw all the usual stuff there, but that's kind of my thoughts.
yeah, so he wasn't in drugs or anything, but I would say that's what we knew, and that you tend to be a creature of habit, for lack of a
Yep.
better word. So if that's
Mhm.
all you know, and the people who are surrounding you, that's all you see, and you're not exposed to things outside of that, that was the thing that allowed me to then ended up breaking away from the crowd, because I got exposed to what was possible outside of that. So that's what I would say is very important. And I read books and go into history on this, is just surrounding yourself and going out to different meetups, or just being around different people so you can get different perspectives. And again, it's tough being in that environment because that's all you know, but that's one of the things I'm working towards, is just, I mean, I'm a part of Big Brothers Big Sisters, where I go back and mentor someone who is actually in that type of environment, but it's really tough, I would say.
Yeah, and and again, I think the common thread there that runs amongst people like yourself who don't necessarily want to go, I guess, quote unquote, back or whatever, is the fact that and I guess I bring all of this back to the way you and I live, and the title of this podcast is cash flow, and it almost is like getting people uncomfortable to begin with, right? Like, you
Hmm.
take people out of what the all like, I'm going to say 75% of this country knows, is to get up at 6 o'clock, drop the kids off at school at 7:15, be to work by 8, work from 8 to 5 or whatever, right? Go home, cook dinner, go to bed, get up
Do it all
tomorrow,
over again.
repeat. And while doing that, investing a portion of that daily money into a corporate match account that then gets siphoned into the stock market to some degree somewhere, right? And I
Hmm.
think that just seems to be the mentality, and that's why I ask you about what the mentality is, because I think the core or the base belief there is a lot the same. It's the comfort level. It's the hey, I can do this, or hey, I know to do that, instead of saying, hey, listen, I can do this for a couple of years, like yourself, like you were like, hey, you entered the labor force and you were like, man, this isn't for me.
It
And
was not. I
then,
quickly found that out.
yeah. And then you pivoted and you were like, okay, hey, I've got to make my own opportunities. And I think a lot of people see that as being the wall to scale, as making your own opportunities, when in fact, there's nothing wrong with being in your comfort zone. There's nothing wrong with working and doing this stuff. But the fact of the matter is when you're just chunking off a portion of your check every month and you're not paying attention to what and maximizing what that's going to,
Yep.
that's the system that's designed to work you till you're 65 or whatever the case is right now. Anyway, that's
And
why I
Wall
guess
Street's the one that's really making the money on that.
and man, they've done a fabulous job of scaring the hell out of people into paying them too. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, you don't want to.
And this is the thing that I've been constantly just working on, Casey, is awareness. That is, and especially during the times that we're currently in, is I am using this as a learning lesson to see what's going on in the media, how people are reacting, and on this, because when I was younger, is I didn't have the awareness, understanding human nature, why people do this versus that, what's going on macro economics. That way, you can be a foot. I would say you would be ahead of everyone else. But just going back to your example, is that just being in the rat race or chucking your money into mutual funds and getting mashed and all that, is if you don't have the awareness and going above beyond that, you could realize that, well, the only people that I'm making very minimal on this, and at some point there's actually more risk involved with that. I should actually look at this other alternative. But this goes back to what you were saying, is people just tend to be comfortable.
Yeah, and they tend to, and honestly, they tend to just not know any better as far as that's concerned too. Now, that it's funny. I bring it up on this show all the time. The fact that you and I, real estate syndicators, capital raisers, whatever you want to call us, which by the way, it's my understanding that it's getting really close to the time where we need to stop using the term capital raiser. I think from a SEC compliance standpoint, I think it puts a huge target on your back. But anyway, that you and I have to, as real estate syndicators, we've got to stop at every corner, at every path, at every stop sign, at every worm crossing the road, and disclose. Then we have to disclose that we disclosed all of that, right? And yet you can go out and you can invest in 126 fund number 1267332ZYQ as much as you want, and Bernie Madoff can run off with your money, and you're like, nobody ever told me that could happen. And so I find it funny that Wall Street has barricaded itself into this bubble, and now that's what makes people feel comfortable, because anything outside of that bubble has got to be whatever, right?
I mean, great job on them from a sales and building that product. That could, I mean, that even goes into other areas such as college, but I don't even want to go and put on my tinfoil hat, because that's a rabbit hole that we can go down.
I understand. Yeah. So, and the thing is that, you know, Sterling, you and I and everybody else in our industry has a responsibility to some degree, you know, kind of boil it all down and get the reduction of what this business actually is and how it can assist you in your retirement goals, instead of these complicated analyses of, well, this capital stack is this, and then you're going to
waterfall, hurdle rates, all this. Yeah.
When in fact, people are like, no, how can you help me, Sterling? How can you help me get out of, I don't want to get out of my comfort zone, Sterling. I want to stay right here, but I also want to maximize what I'm doing with my portfolio, and you know, kind of getting it into, I guess, layman's terms for lack of really a better term, I guess. And so we want to make sure that we pull people out of that comfort zone. And so again, that's why I think that people like you, who have been and seen almost the worst of humanity in a way, all the way to now being a successful entrepreneur, and going back, and it's really hard to do because it's not profitable. It's a very long time before that type of a process is profitable, by you going back to the 15-year-olds that are that are there and saying, hey guys, you can raise capital too, and you can invest, and you can do this, and you can do that, because they're going to be 15 years before they're even
Yeah, and
remotely close to the ability to do
And,
that.
and here's the other tough part, and I'll play devil's advocate with this: is many are just not ready or want to hear that message. So
That's right.
you have to consider the ROI with that. So it's tough for everyone on here. That's one of the things I'm figuring out. But yeah.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the CashFlowPro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making CashFlow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show. You know, when you talk about people not ready to hear the message of what we have to offer and what we bring to the table when it comes to ability to invest, and I guess it comes back to, again, what has Wall Street done that we are not effectively doing that really can bring people in and educate them? Because everybody knows that, hey, if you pick whatever fund you pick for your portfolio to be invested in, basically there's a general consensus that, hey, my money's in the stock market, right? And you don't ever hear anybody say, hey, my money's in the real estate market. Like, why can't those be almost interchangeable terms? And again, I feel like it's because Wall Street has barricaded the money up, and the SEC is completely on their side. Well, I'll say completely. They're on their side when it comes to regulations and so on. So anyway, so why don't we talk a little bit about you and what you all have going on right now? Just kind of take this conversation a little bit. We've got the backstory. We figured out where you came from, who Sterling is, who Sterling was surrounding himself with, and now who Sterling surrounds himself with. And I really want the audience to be able to draw that, to pull those two apart, and in essence, look right here. Here's a guy who had every opportunity to go back and do the things that so many do, bad things, wrong things, whatever, and simply by elevating the people that he chose to be around, in effect, elevated your everything. I mean, elevated everything about you, right? I mean,
It wasn't even just that. I had to do a lot of rewiring of my beliefs, my thoughts, because my software was broken, for lack of better words, and I'm still constantly looking to get better.
That's a good way to put it, man. That's a great way to put it. Software, but you were missing a couple lines of code, and once those
quite a bit of code, but yeah.
Well, all right. So yeah, once those codes got plugged in, man, you really seemed to have came full circle with it.
And that came from listening to individuals such as Earl Nightingale, which I may be dating myself with that, but he's is similar to a Zig Ziglar, but and then the Tony Robbins, the Norman Vincent Peales, and I was really just rewiring. And again, this goes back to the software that I had just from the upbringing just was not going to get me to where I wanted to go. So I had to end up just going through and just updating the code, actually removing the original code and then just building the new code from scratch. So it all really started, it started with mindset, and then also the people I surrounded myself with. And that's how I ended up really getting my first deal, was through the people I surrounded myself with on the single family side. And then shortly after that, multifamily is when I had transitioned, the same thing. I took those same principles.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And so now we did post high school education. I always kind of talk about this. Were you privy to any like MBA or anything like that brought you along this path? I know I wasn't. I had some business exposure in my ag econ degree, but I always like to see where people, because to me, there's almost a difference in people that are self-taught versus people that taught by the book. I don't necessarily mean a difference like that. I just mean a difference in the way we talk about things and the way we discuss the manners that we use to relay the material.
Yeah, so for me, a majority was self-taught. I went to school for a human biology degree, ended up dropping out to focus full-time on real estate. And college just was not for me. I took chemistry. It was either it was 5 times. I took the first one, chemistry one, 3 times, and
I took it
then
too.
the second. Yeah,
I took
gosh, it
it
was
too,
bad.
man. I was like, like, it was just a concept that I could not get my mind around. I could do
Same, yeah,
calculus, I could do
likewise.
everything. I was just like, what do you mean these elements? What are you talking about? It's a
But
good thing
just
they didn't
think
leave
about
me.
it: is how much of that do you use today?
Whew. Very little in this business. I mean, now the algebra, I used to make the same argument about the algebra and the math, but now that I do it, but at the same time, I've found it very similar to the idea that you upped the people that were around you. Very similar to that idea is the thought that, hey, maybe you're not going to use these exact principles, but the fact of the matter is we've stretched your mind to know
I agree.
that they
Yeah.
exist.
Somewhat in a way. I didn't get that much value from college myself personally,
I follow you.
but that ended up showing me of what I did not enjoy and the route that I did not want to go down, and that's how I ended up. My roommate, while I was in college, dad owned that construction company, and that's how I got my foot in the door as a laborer. So that college experience opened up that relationship, and then that's
Sure.
how I ended up. So there was that benefit from it.
And that's very, very important. I mean, the fact that you can go back and account for the relationship that came from that is very, very important. So, but so what do you all have going on? I know that we were talking about 500 units that you've bought since what year was it?
This was 2014, end of 2014, beginning of 2015. Well, 2014 was when I bought my first deal.
7 or 8 years ago. And then how many units you have? You have 500 or a little over 500 right now, right?
So it was at that point, but had been selling a large amount of the portfolio. So just have under 200 units now. And actually will be selling my last deal that I have, because right now is the time where I believe there's a lot of greediness. So this is the time I felt to be more fearful and actually selling and preparing for in the event things start to cool down. Not a crash necessarily, but things start to cool down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right now, as of recording, mid-ish September, by the time this episode airs, obviously the landscape could be completely different as we've been well versed. But as of right now, the problem that I see in the multifamily space, and I've experienced it day in and day out for the last 2 months, and it's really made me want to. Remember, we talked about throwing my computer into a pile of pillows, and yes, the pile of pillows is definitely good, but this idea that sellers want yesterday's prices, buyers want tomorrow's prices, and the sellers are right now tending to be the most hard-headed bunch of everybody that's involved because they've missed the top. And again, you're dealing with a lot of people who are probably talking 40, 50, 60% leverage, equity to loan. And so they're like, well, we don't have to sell. We can go up on the rents and make it worth this. And so, you're trying to navigate these waters of uncertainty. And I think you selling is definitely a good move for sure.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm one of those, you could say one of those hard-headed sellers, because buyers are still paying at this moment and have a deal under contract, but it's been about 3 months or so. And then there was a fire that happened. So we're going back and forth with insurance. But again, this comes up is that the uncertainty each and every month.
You're talking about a sale. You had a sale. You've got a sale under contract or
a sale under contract.
Sale under contract. Okay.
Correct.
And then y'all had a fire at the complex and.
Correct. Took down. So this is a 156 unit and it took down 8 units. And now going back and forth with the insurance company on how much we'll be able to get for the renovations. And then we'll have to go back to the buyer to see if they accept. But the insurance company has been dragging their feet. But the main moral of this story is that still the demand has been there, but the demand was not there as it was 6 to 8 months ago was the prime time to sell. Now it's just getting uncertain and uncertain. But I believe over the long term, is real estate's going to be up and to the right. It's just whether or not in the next 1.5, 2 years that's where I believe things will start to take a little bit of shift more on the
Go
down.
back 100 years from today, 1922, and show me when the show. I mean, it's always been up and to the right. That's what my argument always is, man. I'm like, listen, it's so aggravating because you have the Bernie Madoffs of this world that basically go in and at gunpoint rob the financial industry, and they're like, oh, well, nobody told me that could happen, and here we are operating in an industry that has never had a negative delta over a given period of time.
Agreed. Yeah.
And it's just frustrating. But anyway,
and I want to mention quickly on that. I read a book. This was the autobiography of Julius Erving. So a really good, I believe he's in a Hall of Fame basketball player, but he was talking about
he's in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, he's in the Hall of Fame. Okay, God, fair enough. Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah, I'm a little off on my basketball IQ, but and he was talking about buying a house in California, and what he said he bought that for, I forget exactly what it was, but it wasn't even close, maybe 1,000 or 2,000, but somewhere where I looked at that and I said, wow, that is inflation based upon where he had bought it years ago. And now what properties, the lowest you can get is not even close to what he ended up buying his for, a new house.
Yeah. And that's so, listen, and my listeners, and I'll tell you this, and you can carry this forward into another discussion somewhere else, but the thought that I always have, and I just had this discussion with somebody in our real estate sales business last night. Okay. They're concerned about buying a property right now while it's at its quote unquote peak, if you will. And here's the thought. So if you go back to 16 years ago today, September, I'm going to say mid-September 2006. Okay. The market was like blazing, right? There was never going to be another bad day. Properties were as high as they ever were. Everybody was just giddy, right? All right. Well, then fast forward from 06 to 07, 08, 09, 10, that era where all of a sudden it's real estate is a death trap. You're going to lose everything you've got.
Don't even touch it. It's going to keep going lower.
We've gone to two extremes of the emotions right there. Call it in 5 years period. Right now, keeping in mind, fast forward to 2022, keeping in mind that 06 was the highest that everything. I mean, it was just exuberantly high. Right now, you think about this. Here in 2022, is there a property right off that you can think of that you would not immediately say, I'll take it for what it cost in 2000, for whatever they were asking in 2006, I'll take it right now, sight unseen?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yes.
And that's what my argument always is okay, hey, there we were as good as it had ever been. We were also as bad at it as it had ever been. And now we're still better than we were when we started.
Yeah, it's just the main thing with that, playing devil's advocate, is that if you are a long-term buy and hold investor, you're good. Not financial advice, or somewhat, I'll call it what it is, but is that if you're a buy and hold investor, it's fine in the event that what you mentioned, the 2007, 2008, 2009, where that downturn did happen and you bought in 06, but is if for whatever reason you need to get out of that property, whether it does not cash flow as you expected, and you try and sell it during the downturn, that's where you would get in trouble. That's right. And that's the risk. Right.
And a forceful exit is it never benefits anybody. And that's what's so difficult. And, and that's why I feel like the value of these syndications is they're so valuable, right? Because now you don't really have a choice. You come in with 50 grand into a syndication deal that's 6 years, has a 6-year business plan, or even if it's a fund or whatever the case is, I mean, you're going to continue to get your return, but you can't call that guy up and say, hey, I want my 50 grand back. Hey, I want to pull out right now. And it keeps that real estate market, it keeps the undertow of that real estate market strong because people can't
it's illiquid
and crash.
It's illiquid.
Correct. And that's I think a little bit where the SEC and the government stuff, they depend on us to basically prop the bottom up so that people can't just immediately exit out of commercial real estate. So awesome. Listen, Sterling, I know you got to get going. I know we're busy people. So we have a couple of questions we ask every guest that comes on the show. The first of those questions is, what is the best book that you've recently read or are currently reading?
I'd say Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, or co-founder
Man,
of Nike.
that book, oh my gosh. I read it twice. Like I finished it and I started it right back over.
So good. I felt how it was written. It felt as if I was actually there when he talked about running. So wonderfully written.
Yep, and the trips to Japan, and basically the way that his resolve was just selling tennis shoes out of the trunk of his car.
Yeah, and how they started and how they evolved too. Yeah.
And it's just it's such a fascinating story, and it's the fact that you've got these people that work a lifetime and don't get 1/1,000,000th of what he's been able to acquire and been able to take over and keep going, and the gist that he brings and the way he stays in the headline. I say I'm talking about Nike, obviously Phil Knight, but whatever. So anyway, all right, next question. What is a dream vacation that you have taken or hope to take?
I'd say Dubai. That was one I really enjoyed, riding on the camels. What else did I do there? It was just one of those experiences that I had in life, and the most part I did enjoy that when I was there was just sitting on the stoop. And if you watch Hey Arnold, Stoop Kid, Afraid to Leave His Stoop. So I was sitting on that stoop, drinking my tea and just people watching it. Really enjoyed just kicking back, and great culture.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, the culture I always have heard that, and that's what I'm a culture junkie. That's why I get down with people in the hood, or I like you called it the hood. I'll get down with people in the hood, or I'll go to a dinner with a black tie on. I do not care, and I love everybody I talk to. It makes no difference where they come from. So anyway, all right. So with that being said, Sterling, if somebody heard something that resonated with them, they want to reach out, and I just some reason believe that there's some kid somewhere listening to this that definitely wants to learn more. How can people reach out and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so one is just visiting sterlingwhiteofficial.com. That is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. And then also I have a YouTube channel as well. Just type in Sterling White into the search bar and look for a bald, handsome guy, and I'll come right on up.
Bald, handsome guy. I like that.
Yes,
that's a good marketing technique. That's awesome. That's sweet, dude. All right, cool, man. Sterling, thank you so much for being with us today. We always want to make sure our guests feel appreciated, and we will most definitely send anybody your way that asks. With that being said, I want to ask the listeners to please head down and smash that subscribe button. And while you're there, leave us a review so that others may know what you like or loved about the CashFlowPro podcast. And again, I can't thank you enough, Sterling. And listeners, thank you all. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day.
Appreciate you all.
CashFlowPro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.